We'll be focusing this morning on getting reactions to Lord Reid's presentation yesterday. Now, President of the Judicial Committee of the UK-based Privy Council, Lord Reid, says he has asked the British government to invite senior judges from the jurisdictions that they serve to sit with them in an effort to understand the conditions of those countries from which appeal cases come. Lord Reid made the statement on Wednesday while delivering a virtual lecture at an event put on by the Mona campus of the University of the West Indies. Norige Banton tells us more.
The lecture was held under the theme Judicial Policy Construction by Apex Courts. The lecture comes as the debate continues about whether Jamaica should continue to cling to the Privy Council as its final appellate court or accede to the civil and criminal jurisdictions of the Caribbean Court of Justice (CCJ). Some legal experts have asserted that Jamaica's Apex Court should continue to be the Privy Council because they are far removed from the local conditions of a jurisdiction and assess a case with no preconceived biases. However, this has also been a criticism of the Privy Council and a reason given for those advocating for the CCJ to be Jamaica's final appellate court. Lord Reid says he has recommended to the UK government that senior judges from the jurisdictions that they serve sit on the Privy Council.
Having the benefit of the opinion of a judge with direct experience of local conditions can only enhance the quality of the Privy Council's decision-making. I've therefore asked the UK government to consider a proposal to invite senior judges from outside the UK to sit with us again on the Privy Council. This isn't currently possible in relation to most of the Privy Council jurisdictions under the legislation which currently governs appointments. The exceptions include judges of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, the High Court of Trinidad and Tobago, and the Supreme Court of Jamaica, who can sit on the Privy Council if they are first appointed as Privy Councillors. At present, none of the judges from these jurisdictions are Privy Councillors, but I'm hopeful that that position may change before long.
He says Privy Council judges have also, over the years, taken the opportunity to sit in other jurisdictions that they serve in an effort to experience the hearings of cases in those locales. Lord Reid also addressed the criticism that the Privy Council is inaccessible and expensive for litigants in Jamaica and other jurisdictions.
Of course, I'm conscious of a significant expense involved in travelling to the UK from some of the Privy Council jurisdictions. The Privy Council therefore offers online or hybrid hearings, which can sometimes be the most efficient and proportionate option. This also enables us to hear the case at a time when it can be viewed by the public locally. For example, we had a case from the Cook Islands in the Pacific concerned with the protection of the marine environment. We heard the case online and sat at 7 o'clock in the evening in the UK, which was 9 o'clock in the morning in the Cook Islands.
Lord Reid says the internet has increased the accessibility of the court.
Privy Council hearings are all live streamed on the court's website and made available on demand afterwards on both the website and the court's YouTube channel. For example, over 55,000 people watched the Sean Campbell hearing live online. This enabled those with an interest in the case in Jamaica and elsewhere, and there was a particularly high number of viewers in New York, to see the arguments being put forward by counsel, the questions being asked by the judges, to get a much better understanding of the proceedings than would have been possible in the pre-internet age.
Norige Banton for Nationwide News.
Joining us now for a discussion to react to Lord Reid's presentation, attorney at law, King's Counsel Michael Hilton, and a second-year student at the law faculty there at Mona, Ayana Robinson. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Ayana on the line.
Hi, good morning. Thank you.
Good morning, Ayana.
Thank you both for joining us here on Nationwide this morning. Casey Hilton, what did you make of Lord Reid's presentation yesterday?
It was very interesting, and I'm very pleased that he accepted the invitation and came and spoke with us. Most of the presentation dealt with the role of judges of final courts and how they decide matters. It wasn't about the Privy Council itself necessarily, but he did make some very interesting and significant comments on how the Privy Council sees their role in relation to appeals from countries like Jamaica, and including the point that your reporter just repeated in relation to judges of the elsewhere in the Commonwealth, including our region, sitting on the court. It was very interesting.
I missed the last couple of words he said.
Yes, it was very interesting, especially the comments he made about judges sitting from the region, sitting on the Privy Council, and other comments about increasing access.
What were those reasons that he gave about increasing access compelling to you? He said, just for the benefit of our listeners, if they're just joining us, that there are these hybrid formats where you can make your arguments from wherever you are using the internet, and they have the online modality where persons from wherever they are can tune in using their online platform and listen to the cases live. Were those compelling arguments about access?
Not at all. So, depends on what you're comparing. These are good things. These increase access. But the underlying debate, which is, should we continue to go to the Privy Council or should we move instead to the CCJ? Those comments don't advance the debate because all of those things also apply to the CCJ. So, for the purposes of the comparison, they're not really relevant. So the Privy Council is now doing things that the CCJ has been doing for some time. And I should also say, for fairness, while many of your listeners may be hearing it for the first time, it's not new. The Privy Council has been allowing this access for a while. It's throughout COVID, all cases were heard in that way. So it's not something new and strange. But it's a good thing.
For you, Ayana, how did you receive the presentation from Lord Reid?
I really enjoyed Lord Reid's presentation. I think that it was a very thoughtful presentation. You could tell that he has been thinking about the ways in which he could give Jamaicans a better experience when they appeal to the Privy Council. So, for example, he was talking about how he tries to consider the local court's decisions when he's making the decisions, so he can make a decision which is appropriate in the context of Jamaica, recognizing that he is divorced from the culture of Jamaica being in the UK, as well as Casey Hilton was talking about that he wants to have judges from jurisdictions like Jamaica on the Privy Council to help give them better decisions. But as Casey Hilton was also saying, I wasn't really convinced that some of these things are as effective as he says they will be, because I'm not sure how effectively they can actually remedy how divorced the Privy Council is from the local culture, because I'm not sure how well received this will actually be, or how effective it will be, because the majority of the judges of the Privy Council will still be British judges.
Lord Reid appeared via Zoom link as he tried to preserve the UK Privy Council's relationship with Jamaica, and he made some arguments in a 45-minute presentation. No Q&A. He's an active judge and they wouldn't open that portal, and we're getting reaction to those remarks from Attorney at Law, King's Counsel Michael Hilton, and second-year law student Ayana Robinson. Casey Hilton, before yesterday we knew on the record what your views were about the Privy Council and Jamaica's continued relationship with the UK-based body. I note that you describe Lord Reid's presentation and his remarks as interesting. Is that a kind way of saying that nothing that was said moved you from your established position?
No. Well, two things. One, nothing he said moved me from my position. No, that's correct, and I'll explain why. But I wasn't being insulting or demeaning.
No, man, not saying you were either. Not saying you were either. Not suggesting you were.
The things that he said are good. Many of them, they do help access. For the time that we remain in the Privy Council, the more we can improve the situation, the better. You know, so I'm not at all criticizing the things he said. But let's look at some of the things. The proposal that Ayana just mentioned, in relation to judges from the region sitting on the court. This is something that was done for like over a century. Up to 2003, I think it was, or 4, judges from around the Commonwealth, including Jamaica, sat by invitation on the court. So you'd have 5 judges or more hearing an appeal, and one of them might be a judge from somewhere else, not an English judge. This was very rare, but it happened.
Yes.
Then the legislation in the UK apparently changed, and that has not happened for 20 years.
Yes.
It's not clear to me now why now the president is calling on the government to change and go back. But if it changes and move back and there is a judge from the region sitting on the court, that's probably a good thing. I'm not sure how much it affects the real issue we are addressing.
Yes. I felt listening to the comments that having the benefit of listening to the initial reaction to the statements he made, which got him the invitation to the UWI, that perhaps Lord Reid would have come with a stronger entreaty to Jamaicans to convince those who are on the fence why the Privy Council remains the best option or the better option if you're comparing it to the CCJ. And for those who have made their minds up that we should rid ourselves of this court, that, these are compelling arguments to go back on that. And I'm saying that I didn't hear anything to move the needle. For instance, Casey Hilton, you've long stated that the issue of access to the court, people are only looking at one thing. People are looking at the fact that the cost of travel to the UK, when the cost involved in going to the Privy Council is so much more than just a plane ticket. And I wanted you to expand on that this morning.
Yes. So parties almost invariably retain solicitors and separate counsel. And you may recall that the UK still has a system where you have barristers and solicitors. That is to say, people who actually argue the case and separate attorneys who actually prepare the papers and liaise with the court and so on. And while in Jamaica, you just have attorneys who do both. People who appear have cases in the Privy Council tend to use both. Now, something else important happened yesterday. At the same time that Lord Reid was addressing us in that seminar, there was a meeting going on where another lord, Lord Briggs, was in a meeting with attorneys around the world who appear in the Privy Council, explaining or discussing some new rules that they are considering. And those new rules, I understand, because obviously I wasn't there, include electronic filing of documents. And it may be that those new rules will reduce the need to retain solicitors. So I'm not exactly sure how that will work, but it's a step that could reduce costs.
But the cost of retaining a barrister would still remain?
Yes. Mm-hmm. No. But that's, to be fair, you need to retain a barrister.
Yeah, anyway, yeah.
In the court.
Yeah, man.
But here's what happens in practice. We're talking about the Vibes cartel case, the Campbell case,
yes,
recently, which Lord Reid interestingly mentioned many times.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Both sides hired English counsel. Both sides, including our DPP, both sides had English solicitors. So, in addition, as recently as that, when you did have the hybrid, when you did have the ability to go online, if you have a really important case, you want to be in the court, looking at the judges' faces, interacting directly with the court. You don't have an important case and be doing it by Zoom.
Yes.
I mean, so saying you have the option is helpful, it's good in many cases, but it doesn't replace the ability that you would like to have to go to your final court.
But stay with the cost issue, because I want to drive this home for those who are not aware. So we're talking about cost of travel to the UK. One, we're talking about a visa process that is a lottery. To be frank, that's another thing. You're talking about the retention of a solicitor and a barrister, which are significant costs. And then, are there other attendant costs that I have not mentioned as yet?
Well, you mentioned the travel at the start,
yes,
but yeah, that's pretty much the cost. Yes.
So yes,
the costs are substantial.
Yes.
That's the accessibility portion, but also George, Casey Hilton, and Ayana, there's the matter that people keep talking about trust between the Privy Council and the CCJ, and I want to also speak to that matter this morning. Ayana, for you as well as your other peers there at the law faculty, How are they viewing that issue, the matter of trust, when they look at the Privy Council and the CCJ?
So when you speak about trust, do you mean in terms of trusting that they will deliver an impartial decision?
Yes.
Indeed, yes.
Okay, so my peers are definitely split on this issue. Some people believe that the Caribbean Court of Justice may be too close for comfort, so to speak colloquially, in the sense that they may be too close to our culture, which may lead to them making emotional decisions, or that many of the lawyers may know the judges, and that this would lead to there being some kind of bias in the decisions, whereas the Privy Council, which is in the UK, might give a more impartial decision because they would be separated. But a lot of my peers, including myself, don't really agree with that submission, because if you look at even the judges of the Privy Council, many of them would know each other. Many of them have been to the same universities, and they work closely together, not just on the Privy Council, but also in the UK Supreme Court. And I don't think that it necessarily follows that the Caribbean Court of Justice will be more biased because the Caribbean is a smaller place, particularly because the Caribbean countries are all separate countries where people do not see each other all the time. Whereas in the UK, the people live in one country and they may be in the same area. But in terms of the Privy Council, some people do believe that the Privy Council, since it has been around for a longer time, people know that they have this long-standing history of the Privy Council delivering excellent decisions, and that the Privy Council has at times, of course, always decided that cases in Jamaica or other countries in the Caribbean have been decided incorrect, and because of that, they're going to deliver a new decision or overturn the decision, as in the recent Sean Campbell case.
But Ayana, if I may, you speak about the relationship between the judges of the Privy Council and their counterparts in the UK. I think a part of the fear about partiality rests with a situation in the CCJ case where the judges at the CCJ are products of the same institutions as the people who bring the cases before them. So because of the if you want to call it homogeneity in tertiary education in this region, where the University of West Indies, world-class rated institution, looms large, it is more likely that a judge at the CCJ would have been a schoolmate, batchmate of someone else who's a product of the UWI in a case concerning business or commerce for that matter, than it is for a judge at the UK-based Privy Council to have that kind of relationship with a person from Jamaica bringing a case to them. And some persons say, well, there are grounds for me being suspicious of impartiality in judgment, given the proximity between judges there and the people who bring cases to them, as opposed to judges at the CCJ and people in the Caribbean who bring cases to them.
I can see that that's definitely a risk because the Caribbean is obviously smaller than the UK, but I am not convinced that the relationship that people in the UK would not necessarily know each other, because the Privy Council within itself, in its history, is a highly imperialistic institution, and many of the people would know each other through some of the, more well-known universities in the UK, such as the University of Oxford and Cambridge, etc. But I do not believe that just because people know each other that it would necessarily lead to their being biased, because people can know each other and still deliver an effective decision. And as was stated yesterday in the discussion by Mr. Smith, one of the discussants, in the Caribbean, because people know each other, people will know what to expect from the person and may even hold them to a different standard because they know this person and they're not looking at them as this foreign, strange person. They know what to expect from this person, and that in certain circumstances, that could actually be a fair decision because people might not feel that they have to behave in a particular manner. So I don't really think that just because people know each other, that would invalidate the fairness of a decision.
Yes. Casey, yes, Casey.
You put your finger on it, John, and that's what some people are saying. Let me give you a couple of things that are wrong with that argument.
Yes.
When I appear before the CCJ, there's a good chance, I know some of the judges. I went to school with some of the judges. But so did my opponent 10-1. Because that point you made about homogeneity among tertiary institutions. That applies to counsel on both sides. My opponent knows the judges too. So where's the advantage? We all came from the same system. That doesn't distance
Yes.
and knowing the person is not what creates or even assists with integrity of judges.
Yes.
Integrity of judges results and of the judicial system results in from the way in which judges are chosen, the way in which judges are protected, given security of tenure and protected from outside influence, and the terms of their employment. Those are the things that you look to, not whether they went to the same law school or not. It's a fiction. We have, if you follow that, you'll be saying, we can't trust our own people in our own court. We will always need to go to some foreign body
Yes.
to get true justice.
I must say to you, Casey, I take that point. I must say to you that, when I make this point, I'm not inviting you to be critical because you've been clear that you're not criticizing what was said because you found it helpful from Lord Reed. But I was listening to hear some big thing announced that would move us in the direction of saying, let's reconsider this thing about abandoning the UK-based Privy Council. And I view it as a missed opportunity on Wednesday. And I invite you to comment on that. Did you see it that way as well?
Well, I didn't, because I don't know what else he could have said. That's the thing. I actually thought that he went much further than I expected. I mean, he made it very, very clear that they would like to continue being Jamaica's final court. And that's an issue that has been in question because of comments by a former president. Actually. Yeah. So he was very emphatic on that. But he can address some of the concerns, hybrid hearings and increasing access in some ways. But there's not much more he can do. The fundamental problem, it is not our court. It is not a court created by us. We have no say in how the court runs, what rules they implement. I said there was a meeting yesterday where they were telling us new rules that are being put in place.
Yes.
This is not something that we can say, no, we don't agree with that rule.
We can't contest them, yes.
Sure. And we have a system in the CCJ which no one has criticized and which I think is world class, the best in the world, in the way in which judges are appointed. It's an independent, transparent, fair process in which the politicians do not control. We don't even know, most people, how Privy Council judges are appointed, and certainly not with any input from us.
Yes. Yes.
Those are the factors that he can't change.
Yes. And Ayana, in terms of what Lord Reed said, just on the strength of what he said, following on from the comments that got him the invitation to address the seminar yesterday, are you even more clear in your mind that, the days of the Privy Council are numbered and it's time to move on?
Well, I'm not sure, because at the end of the day it will depend on what the majority think in the wake of his presentation. But I do think that the presentation would be still beneficial for some people who are still thinking that the Privy Council may be the better option, just because, as Casey Hilton was saying, he's trying to make steps to be a more thoughtful court in the wake of the comments by previous members of the Privy Council that, for example, the Caribbean countries and other countries which go to the Privy Council in an ideal world should adopt their own courts, whereas he's expressing that he wants to continue this relationship with Jamaica and that he wants to strengthen the relationship with Jamaica by making steps with having judges from Jamaica hear the decisions to try and ensure that the decisions are fair for Jamaicans and many Jamaicans' last opportunity to have a decision in their favor. However, I'm not sure it would have done much for the people who are leaning towards the CCJ because, as J.P. Hilton said, he did not provide anything that the CCJ does not already do. So I think it would depend on the moral standpoint, the ideology of the listener, because if you are a person who was thinking about the Privy Council anyway, I think that it would definitely strengthen your view, but if you are on the opposite end of the spectrum, I don't think it will be convincing for you.
Thank you. Casey Hilton, borrowed time. If it is that they remove the visa requirement for persons who have a case to argue at that level, would that provide you with the kind of comfort to say, well, you know what, let's go on, let's soldier on with this as our final court, the Privy Council?
No, absolutely not. It's like the hybrid hearings. It is something, it would be a positive step. It would increase access. But it doesn't address the fundamental point, not our court.
Hear you on that. Thank you this morning, Casey Hilton. Thank you, Ayan Robinson. A national survey conducted by Market Research Services Limited, the company run by respected post Don Anderson, reveals that nearly half of Jamaicans are dissatisfied with the country's current direction under the JLP administration. The poll was commissioned by the PNP, and it found that 47% of respondents believe Jamaica is heading in the wrong direction. That sentiment, driven by several critical issues, including where among that 47%, 48% of those cited high youth unemployment and idleness as primary concerns. For more on this poll, we're joined by Don Anderson. Morning, Don.
Hey, morning. How are you doing?
I am well. All is good?
Good. I'm good, thank you.
Nice. All right. So you're just to establish the groundwork. You did this poll when and how many people you surveyed again?
We did the field work between the 4th and the 12th of April, so this month, and it was commissioned by the People's National Party, as they have been doing for some time now.
Yes. Insofar as the number of people who say wrong direction,
Right.
what's the trend that these latest numbers support?
First of all, until you have a number of surveys done, it is difficult to talk in terms of a trend. But the pattern is, in other words, where is it going, it's difficult to say. But over the last 5 or so years that we have been doing this actually including this question on political polls that we have done, and it's probably about 10 or 12 such over the past 5 years. The pattern has been that the majority of persons interviewed, over 50%, say that the country is going in the wrong direction. I made a point that this is not unusual. And as a matter of fact, anywhere we work, you find that this is a pattern where the majority don't believe the country is going in the right direction. Why? If you look at the local government election, for example, where 29% voted and maybe 15% voted for the Jamaica Labour Party, it means that 85% didn't vote for the Jamaica Labour Party, and similarly for the People's National Party. And hence, you have a whole body of persons from which you could craft out a level of dissatisfaction, and this is precisely what is taking place. So that explains why you have such a high percentage of persons saying the country is going in the wrong direction, because a significant number of persons do not support the incumbent, nor in fact the opposition. All right? Okay. So the pattern has been that over the years we've done this study, the majority, in excess of 50%, have indicated that they believe the country is going in the wrong direction. In this particular study, we had a dip in that number below 50%, and therefore it's a pattern, but it's not a trend yet. If when we do the study again, which we will do probably in another 2 months, that pattern continues, then you can say the trend is in the direction where more and more people are believing the country is going in the right direction, or less and less people are thinking the country is going in the wrong direction. All right?
Yeah.
But at the moment, it's too early to say this is a trend. What we found in the last study was that fewer persons are now saying the country is going in the wrong direction.
And on the matter, Don, of that, we're reporting too that the sentiment was driven by several critical issues, including of 48% of people saying that there was a high youth unemployment and idleness as their primary concern. Was there more that was said? For example, was there a line that you said they could explain a little bit more? What did they say? Is it that people can't get jobs or they don't want to work? This matter of youth unemployment. Was more said on that?
Well, it's difficult to say. I mean, we just picked up the verbatim comments from persons. We said, okay, of that 47%, we said that the country was going in the wrong direction. Why is it that you say so? What is your sentiment? What is driving this kind of comment from you? And they gave us verbatim comments that we tracked. So youth unemployment is a key factor. Crime and violence obviously comes up every now and then. So the most important factor was that persons didn't think that young people were getting jobs or adequate or satisfactory jobs. And this was what was driving their negative sentiment about the direction in which the country is actually going.
There you put your finger on it, Don.
And that's for the threat. You go ahead, John.
So here's the thing now. There you go. So it's not that those who commented on the job situation were saying young people especially did not have jobs. Their sentiment was also shaped by the fact that the young people did not have the quality jobs that either the young people felt they should have or they, the respondent, felt the young people should have. Am I right?
It's the latter. That the 47% who said that the country was going in the wrong direction cited youth unemployment as a factor in their comment and their decision to make this statement.
What about those who say the country is going in the right direction? What does that number indicate, and any pattern to support that number?
Again, the number is 28%. And that represents a significant increase in the number over the years that we have looked at it, who said the country is going in the right direction. In other words, the gap between those who have said the country is going in the wrong direction and those who have said it's going in the right direction has been, in a way, 35%. In this particular situation, that gap is narrower, all right? And you could take positives from that depending on where you're sitting.
Yes.
Okay. Now, that 28%, we asked them, why is it that you think the country is going in the right direction? And the responses were, interestingly, 45% think that more jobs are available. 44% think that roads are being repaired. And 30% there are more educational opportunities, and so on. So we have a range, probably about 14 different answers that they gave. Some gave more than one answer, therefore. And we have a pretty long list of things that people attribute their comment to.
For those who participated in the survey, Don, can you tell us how many people did you ask them their employment status, if they were in work, looking for work, if they were unemployed, and the demographic in terms of the age of the bulk of the respondents to the questions that you posed?
No, in an economic survey, a non-political survey,
Yes.
we would do that. But in a survey, we're looking at certain specific issues, drilling down obviously to who we're likely to vote for. This is not one of the primary questions. An important question, but it's something that you'd ask, It's something that we kind of ask in the Business and Consumer Confidence Survey that we do every year.
And that's where I'm going, because given that MRSL, Market Research Services Limited, also handles the Business and Consumer Confidence Survey for the Conference Board of the Jamaica Chamber of Commerce. And I'm trying to see if there, from your informed perspective, is any link between this PNP Commission survey in terms of wrong direction, right direction, and the reasons for the answer, and what you find in the responses to the Consumer Confidence Survey that you do as well?
Well, this is most the response to that would be the questions are not the same. And once you have two different sets of questions, you can't really compare those results.
So you couldn't even take sentiment from either and apply, because once the questions are not the same, then you can't compare two different surveys.
Really compare them. Once you change a question, you could get any sets of different kinds of answers, and it's difficult to compare two separate questions because they're interpreted in different ways.
Yes.
But if you ask me, if I see any kind of correlation between the responses I get in the two surveys,
yes,
I would say yes.
And that is what?
All right. The fact that people are very, very concerned about youth unemployment. When we look at the consumer confidence level, for example, people are saying one of the reasons that they're skeptical about the way in which the economy is going is that there are not enough jobs for young people. And they aren't getting, decent enough long-term jobs. They probably get some sporadic employment, which is not long-term. And therefore, this doesn't feed into a comfort level that jobs are going to be available to in general, or to the young people.
Yes, and it's in the perception management game, Don Anderson, that the government needs to find an answer to what it is doing to communicate. Because I remember sitting in this space when youth unemployment was 34%. Yes, and now we have a youth unemployment rate, starting says at October 2023, of 12.6%, coming down from 16.7% in July 2022. Yet, the people you and your researchers interact with consistently cite unemployment, especially youth unemployment, as one of the problems with the country. It's
well, remember,
yes,
this is not the entire sample responding to this question,
Yes.
These are those who think the country is either going in the right direction
or wrong direction. Understood.
Okay, so we have to bear in mind.
But still sizable, still sizable to consider in the context of things.
Yeah.
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 That's all the time we have done. Thank you very much for your time as usual. All the best to you.
My pleasure.
Good. Don Anderson, he's the principal of Market Research Services Limited. They do public opinion polls.